Security, this is Captain Helen Strauss. The woman barked into her phone, eyes locked on the teenager seated quietly near the coffee machine. There's an unauthorized male in the crew lounge at Skyreach Terminal. He looks suspicious. Send someone immediately. The boy looked up, startled. Ma'am, I'm just waiting here. Miss Carter told me to sit until she came back. Captain Strauss narrowed her eyes. I don't care who told you what. This lounge is for certified crew only. You don't belong here. The teenager's name was Malik Henderson, a 17-year-old high school senior from Austin, Texas. He sat in one of the oversized leather chairs, his visitor badge dangling from a frayed blue lanyard. He had arrived hours earlier for a career mentorship event hosted by NorthJet Airways, a program meant to give aspiring young aviators a glimpse into the world of commercial aviation. He had been ecstatic. This was his dream. But now, instead of excitement, Malik's heart pounded with confusion and fear. He wasn't loitering. He wasn't doing anything wrong. He had simply been watching a documentary about the history of flight, waiting patiently like his guide had instructed. Yet here he was, accused, judged, and suddenly the center of unwanted attention. Captain Strauss didn't ask questions. She didn't check credentials. She just assumed. Why? Because Malik was a tall, quiet, black teenager sitting alone in a room usually filled with pilots and flight engineers. The radio on her hip crackled as she reported, possible security breach in the crew lounge. Individual is refusing to leave. I need officers now. If you've ever been in a situation where you were judged based on how you looked, not who you are, then you know this story all too well. Hit the subscribe button to hear what happened next. And tell us, where are you watching from? Because sometimes the most dangerous thing a person can do is simply belong in a space where others think they shouldn't. Malik Henderson wasn't like most teenagers his age. While his classmates were glued to gaming consoles or TikTok trends, Malik spent his evenings studying flight paths and watching real-time air traffic controllers on YouTube. He could name every commercial aircraft by sight and often by sound. His bedroom walls weren't filled with celebrity posters, but with laminated charts of airspace patterns, cockpit diagrams, and a vintage poster of the Concorde his father had found at a garage sale. For as long as he could remember, Malik had dreamed of becoming a pilot. Not just any pilot, a commercial airline captain. His fascination began at age 8 when he took his first flight and was invited into the cockpit by a kind co-pilot. The buttons, the lights, the seamless control, it all felt like magic. From that day on, his life found direction. Malik devoured books about aerodynamics, earned top scores in science and math, and built model planes with painstaking detail. So when NorthJet Airways announced its Future Aviators Mentorship Day, Malik's heart practically leapt from his chest. The program offered 10 selected students a chance to tour the airline's main terminal, interact with flight crews, and observe the inner workings of a commercial airline operation. Hundreds applied. Only 10 were chosen. Malik's essay, entitled "The Sky is My Classroom," stood out not just for its eloquence, but for its technical depth and heartfelt passion. He was thrilled when he received the acceptance email. His mother printed it out and taped it to the fridge. His younger sister told everyone at school, "My brother's going to fly planes someday." That Tuesday morning had started like a dream. Malik arrived early at Skyreach International, dressed in his best slacks and a crisp white shirt his mom had ironed twice. He was greeted by Miss Tamara Carter, a warm and quick-witted representative from NorthJet's HR department who would serve as his guide for the day. "You ready to fly, Captain Malik?" she joked, handing him his laminated visitor badge. "That badge gets you access to some amazing places today." Malik beamed as they walked through the employee entrance, bypassing the standard security checkpoint. Miss Carter led him through hangars, maintenance bays, and the operations hub, where pilots filed flight plans and monitored weather patterns. Every turn revealed something new, and Malik soaked it all in like sunlight. "You've really done your homework," Miss Carter said, half impressed, half intrigued, as Malik correctly identified a Boeing 777's maximum thrust range and listed 5 types of turbulence by category. "My mom says if you want to fly, you better know your skies," Malik said with a proud grin. By midday, they had visited the crew simulator room and even stepped into a grounded Airbus cockpit. Malik had barely been able to stop his hands from trembling with excitement as he sat in the captain's seat. But then just after lunch, everything changed. "I'm so sorry, Malik," Miss Carter said, as her phone buzzed urgently. "There's been an issue in HR. I need to step away for maybe 20 minutes. You can wait in the crew lounge. There's a fantastic documentary playing on the TV there. It's about the evolution of commercial aviation. I think you'll love it." Malik nodded eagerly. "I'll be fine." He found a comfortable chair near the far wall of the lounge. The lights were dim, the room was quiet, and the screen flickered with vintage footage of early aircraft and black and white interviews with flight pioneers. Malik was instantly enthralled. He didn't even notice the lounge slowly emptying as crews were called to their gates. He certainly didn't notice when Captain Helen Strauss walked in. She saw him before he saw her. A teenage boy with dark skin, sitting alone in a secure lounge, eyes fixed on the screen like he owned the place. No flight uniform, no pilot's ID, just a visitor badge she didn't bother to read. To her, that was enough. Malik never imagined that the highlight of his young life would turn into one of the most terrifying moments he'd ever face, all because of someone who couldn't see past the color of his skin. Malik barely noticed when the last two pilots left the crew lounge. He was too engrossed in the documentary, an old PBS special detailing how commercial aviation revolutionized the modern world. His eyes lit up as the narrator explained the evolution of jet engines, from early turbojets to modern high-bypass turbofans. The room was dim and quiet, the soft hum of the airport just barely audible beyond the closed doors. Then suddenly the television clicked off. Malik blinked, confused, the screen now reflecting his startled expression. He looked up just in time to see a tall woman in a navy blue uniform, arms crossed, remote still in hand. "How did you get in here?" she demanded, her voice sharp and clipped, the words more accusation than question. Malik sat up straighter. "Ma'am, Miss Carter told me to wait here. I'm part of the mentorship program. She said it'd be okay." Captain Helen Strauss stepped closer, her heels echoing off the lounge tiles. She was in her early 50s, her blonde hair tied in a no-nonsense bun, her uniform perfectly pressed. Her posture was stiff, almost military. "I don't care what someone told you," she snapped. "This lounge is for authorized flight crew only, not visitors." She glanced at the badge dangling from Malik's lanyard, but didn't bother reading it. Her eyes had already made their judgment. "Ma'am, this is my badge. Look," Malik said, rising nervously to his feet and holding it out. "It says NorthJet Future Aviators Program. That's my name, Malik Henderson. Miss Carter from HR brought me here. You can call her." But before he could finish, Captain Strauss snatched the badge from his neck, snapping the plastic clip clean off. The ID card clattered into her palm. Malik gasped, frozen in disbelief. "What are you doing?" he asked, voice cracking. "That's mine." "This has to be fake," she muttered, turning the badge over in her hand like it was contraband. "Or stolen. There's no way someone like you would be given this level of access." The phrase hung in the air like smoke. Malik felt the sting of her words more deeply than he expected. "Someone like me?" he repeated quietly, more to himself than to her. His hands trembled. Captain Strauss reached for her radio. "Security. This is Captain Strauss in the crew lounge. I have an unauthorized individual. Possible breach. Please send officers immediately." "No. Wait. Please," Malik pleaded, panic rising now. "I didn't do anything wrong. I'm not trying to go anywhere. I was just sitting here watching TV. Please, you can call Miss Carter. She'll tell you." But she wasn't listening. She was already pacing toward the door, making a show of her authority for the growing audience just beyond the glass wall. Curious eyes were beginning to turn in their direction. A few pilots paused mid-step. A janitor slowed his cart. No one intervened. Sant. Malik felt like he was shrinking. Was this really happening? Had everything, from his proud acceptance letter to this moment, led to being treated like a criminal for sitting in a chair? His thoughts spiraled. Would they call the police? Would he be arrested? What would this mean for his college applications? For his dream? His mother had warned him, "Not everyone will see you for who you are. Some will only see what they assume you are." And right now, Captain Strauss didn't see a future pilot. She saw a threat. I just want to call my mom, Malik whispered, his voice barely audible. Please, I just want to call my mom. Captain Strauss turned toward the security team gathering outside the door. This is exactly how breaches happen, she said loudly, holding up Malik's badge like it was a forged passport. Someone slips in, takes advantage of lax policies, pretends to belong. Shh. The words slammed into Malik like a wave. He wasn't a guest anymore. He wasn't a student or a dreamer. He was the intruder. And nobody, not a single person, stepped forward to say otherwise. Malik's heart thundered in his chest. The badge that had once felt like a golden ticket now sat in Captain Strauss's clenched hand, twisted and limp, the lanyard dangling like broken evidence. Her eyes scanned the growing group of onlookers outside the crew lounge's glass wall, then turned back to him, cold, calculating. You think you can fake your way in here? She sneered. Pretending to be part of a mentorship program? Nice try. I'm not pretending, Malik said, barely able to find his voice. You can just call Miss Carter. She knows. She said I could wait here. But his words floated uselessly in the air. Through the glass, people were stopping now. Pilots, gate agents, even a few passengers passing by. The crew lounge, once a quiet refuge, was quickly turning into a stage. And Malik was the lone actor, performing a role he'd never auditioned for, the suspect. Captain Strauss stepped forward and raised her voice loud enough for those outside to hear. This is exactly the kind of security risk we've been trained to prevent. Unauthorized individual with fraudulent credentials. We don't tolerate breaches like this, not post 9/11. A couple of people nodded silently, others just looked away. Malik's cheeks burned. The weight of a dozen stares pressed down on him like gravity had doubled. They weren't just looking, they were judging, whispering, assuming. He scanned the hallway through the glass for a familiar face. For Miss Carter, for anyone who might stand beside him. But all he saw were strangers, cold eyes, folded arms, phone cameras held low, possibly recording. The air thinned around him. Was he really about to be arrested for sitting in a lounge and watching a documentary? Was this how quickly things could spiral? Please, he said again, softer now. I didn't do anything wrong. I was invited. But Captain Strauss was already back on the radio. Security, we have a confirmed breach. Counterfeit ID. Possibly scouting restricted areas. Immediate removal required. The word scouting knocked the breath out of him, as if he were some kind of spy, not a student, not a dreamer, just a threat. 2 airport security officers arrived within seconds, tall, uniformed, serious. They approached Malik slowly, one of them already pulling out a notepad. Name and reason for being in this area? The officer asked. Before Malik could open his mouth, Captain Strauss interrupted again. He was snooping, possibly gathering intel. The badge is fake. We're not sure who gave it to him. I found him alone, watching security footage on the lounge TV, refused to leave. That wasn't true. None of it was true. Through the glass, people were stopping now. Pilots, gate agents, even a few passengers passing by. The crew lounge, once a quiet refuge, was quickly turning into a stage. And Malik was the lone actor, performing a role he'd never auditioned for, the suspect. Captain Strauss stepped forward and raised her voice loud enough for those outside to hear. This is exactly the kind of security risk we've been trained to prevent. Unauthorized individual with fraudulent credentials. We don't tolerate breaches like this, not post 9/11. A couple of people nodded silently, others just looked away. Malik's cheeks burned. The weight of a dozen stares pressed down on him like gravity had doubled. They weren't just looking, they were judging, whispering, assuming. He scanned the hallway through the glass for a familiar face. For Miss Carter. For anyone who might stand beside him. But all he saw were strangers, cold eyes, folded arms. Phone cameras held low, possibly recording. The air thinned around him. Was he really about to be arrested for sitting in a lounge and watching a documentary? Was this how quickly things could spiral? Please, he said again, softer now. I didn't do anything wrong. I was invited. But Captain Strauss was already back on the radio. Security, we have a confirmed breach. Counterfeit ID, possibly scouting restricted areas. Immediate removal required. The word scouting knocked the breath out of him, as if he were some kind of spy, not a student. Not a dreamer, just a threat. Two airport security officers arrived within seconds, tall, uniformed, serious. They approached Malik slowly, one of them already pulling out a notepad. "Name and reason for being in this area?" the officer asked. Before Malik could open his mouth, Captain Strauss interrupted again. "He was snooping, possibly gathering intel. The badge is fake. We're not sure who gave it to him. I found him alone, watching security footage on the lounge TV. Refused to leave." That wasn't true.
None of it.
But Malik's throat closed. He could barely breathe, let alone defend himself. All the confidence he'd carried into the airport that morning had evaporated. The polished facts he'd recited during the tour now felt distant, like they belonged to someone else. The officer narrowed his eyes. "You got past security? Who let you in?" "I came in with Miss Carter from NorthJet," Malik stammered. "She gave me this badge. I'm part of the Future Aviators program. She said I could wait here while she took a call." "Where is she now?" I don't know. She said she'd be back in 20 minutes. "Did you go anywhere else? Did anyone else give you access?" "No," Malik said. "I just sat here. I didn't move." But the questions kept coming, faster and colder. Why were you alone? What were you watching? Do you know anyone else in the building? Are you working with anyone? Each one chipped away at what little composure Malik had left. He tried to hold it together. Tried not to cry. Not here. Not in front of all these people. But the room was shrinking around him. Voices overlapping, breath shortening. Even the aviation documentary, the one that had sparked joy just minutes ago, seemed to play in his head now like a cruel joke. "I just want to be a pilot," he whispered. Nobody heard him. One of the officers finally allowed, "You can make one phone call." Malik fumbled for his phone with shaking hands. He didn't want to scare his mom, but he didn't know what else to do. She picked up after 2 rings. "Mom," he said, trying to sound calm, "I need you to come to Terminal D, the crew lounge. Something happened." He swallowed hard. They think I don't belong here." The minutes dragged like hours. Malik sat silently in the corner of the crew lounge, shoulders slumped, his hands still trembling. The hum of airport life outside continued. Boarding announcements, the hiss of espresso machines, luggage wheels clicking over tile. But inside the lounge, time felt frozen. The security officers stood beside him, arms crossed, eyes skeptical. Captain Strauss paced like a prosecutor waiting for a verdict, occasionally checking her watch, clearly irritated. Her voice, moments ago so loud and righteous, had softened now, but her glare had not. "I have a flight to prepare for," she muttered to one of the officers. "We can't waste resources like this. The badge is obviously fake. We need to process him now." The officers nodded, but one of them hesitated. "Let's wait another minute. He made a call." Then, everything changed. The room's atmosphere shifted, subtle at first, like the quiet before a thunderclap. Outside the glass wall, airport employees straightened instinctively. A barista behind the cafe froze mid-pour. Gate agents along the terminal corridor stepped back from their counters. Then came the ripple. 4 sharply dressed individuals in tailored suits, each with tablets and earpieces, strode down the corridor with practiced precision. Behind them, a small team of private security in sleek black uniforms formed a V-shaped formation. Their jackets bore a small but unmistakable insignia, the silver wings of NorthJet Airways executive security. At the center of it all walked a tall, poised woman in a charcoal gray blazer, her presence commanding attention without a single word. Her name badge read, "Ava Henderson, CEO, NorthJet Airways." Malik looked up. His heart skipped. "Mom?" he breathed, almost in disbelief. The crowd parted for her like a tide. Conversations died, phones lowered. Captain Strauss, still facing the officers, didn't notice the silence until it wrapped around her like fog. "Captain Strauss," Ava said evenly as she entered the lounge. Her voice was calm, but every syllable carried weight. "I understand you've detained my son." Captain Strauss froze. She turned slowly, the color draining from her face as recognition set in. I didn't know," she stammered. "I had no idea he was... I was just following protocol." "That's the problem," Ava interrupted, her tone now like steel wrapped in velvet. "You didn't know who he was, and so you assumed he was a threat, without asking, without verifying, without giving him a voice." Malik rose to his feet slowly, still shaken, but now standing a little taller. His mother stepped beside him, placing a firm hand on his back, part protection, part reassurance. One of the executives stepped forward. "We've reviewed the badge, Captain. It's authentic. Mr. Henderson is a registered participant in today's mentorship program. Miss Carter confirmed she asked him to wait here." Another added, "Security footage shows him entering with HR, sitting quietly and watching a documentary. No signs of misconduct. No unauthorized movement. Nothing irregular, except the way he was treated." Captain Strauss's jaw clenched. I just thought." "Exactly," Ava said sharply, eyes locked onto hers. "You thought, you assumed, you acted on bias instead of facts. My son has done nothing wrong, but you've treated him like a criminal in front of half the terminal." She turned to the security officers. "This is my son, Malik Henderson. He has full authorization to be here. You may stand down." The officers nodded, stepping back immediately. Malik let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Ava turned back to Strauss, her voice now quiet but devastating. "Tell me, Captain, if he had been a white teenager in a private school uniform, would you have grabbed his badge, called for backup, publicly humiliated him?" Captain Strauss had no answer, just silence. "I didn't know," she repeated, smaller now. "No," Ava said, "you didn't, but now you do." The room was silent. Every person in the crew lounge, the officers, the bystanders, even the barista watching from behind the glass, seemed to hold their breath. The power dynamic that had defined the last 30 minutes had flipped entirely. Just minutes ago, Captain Helen Strauss had been in full control, barking orders and radiating authority. Now she stood defenseless before the CEO of the airline she worked for and the mother of the boy she had tried to humiliate. Ava Henderson turned toward one of her executive assistants. "Have HR prepare the incident documentation. Effective immediately, Captain Strauss is suspended from duty pending a full investigation." Captain Strauss took a small step back, her voice barely a whisper. "Please, Miss Henderson, I've served this airline for over 20 years. "And in those 20 years," Ava replied evenly, "you should have learned to distinguish between threat and presence, between protocol and prejudice." A murmur rippled through the crowd just outside the lounge. "Your record," Ava continued, "already includes 3 internal complaints, all from employees of color. They were quietly closed, but not forgotten. And now we have video footage, eyewitnesses, and a public incident that shows exactly what your instincts tell you to do when no one's watching, or when you think no one important is watching." Captain Strauss looked at the ground, shame creeping across her face, but Ava wasn't done. "You confiscated a legitimate badge, called security on a minor, accused him of trespassing, espionage even, and attempted to paint him as a threat, all without a single shred of evidence." She gestured to Malik's broken lanyard, still lying on the lounge floor. "You did all this to a 17-year-old honor student, a guest of this airline, and you only stopped because I walked in." A silence heavier than steel followed. Ava inhaled deeply, then said clearly and deliberately, "That is not leadership. That is not protocol. That is fear, bias, and abuse of authority, and I will not tolerate it at NorthJet Airways." Turning once more to her team, Ava gave a small nod. "Escort Captain Strauss to HR. Her credentials are to be deactivated immediately. She is barred from operating flights until this matter is reviewed by the Executive Ethics Board." 2 executives in Navy suits stepped forward. Captain Strauss looked around, perhaps expecting anyone to defend her. But no one spoke. Even the security officers who had followed her earlier now stood at ease, eyes low, clearly distancing themselves from her actions. Defeated, Captain Strauss allowed herself to be escorted out. She didn't say another word. Malik watched her go, a strange mix of emotions swirling inside him. Relief, disbelief, and something closer to sadness. He hadn't wanted revenge. He'd only wanted to be seen, to be treated like he belonged. As the door closed behind Captain Strauss, the tension in the room finally seemed to ease. A tall black woman in a flight captain's uniform stepped forward from the back of the lounge, a woman Malik hadn't noticed before. She wore 4 golden stripes on her shoulders and a quiet smile on her face. "Malik, right?" she said, offering her hand. "I'm Captain Dana Lewis. Heard about you this morning. Smart kid, big future." Malik shook her hand, still stunned. "I'm scheduled to fly out in an hour," Captain Lewis added. Boeing 787, full crew. How would you like to sit in the cockpit before takeoff? Malik blinked. Really? Really. Come see where you belong. Ava smiled and placed a hand on her son's shoulder. Go on, she said gently. I'll catch up. As Malik followed Captain Lewis out of the lounge, his posture was different now. Shoulders back, eyes forward. The fear hadn't vanished completely, but it had been replaced by something stronger. Belief. Not just in himself, but in the idea that the sky really did have room for him. Behind him, Ava stood quietly, watching the space where the humiliation had occurred and the change that had followed. She wasn't just a CEO now. She was a mother who had sent a message to her entire company. Justice isn't optional. Dignity isn't earned. It's owed. And no one, no matter their rank, would be allowed to forget that again. 1 month later, the crew lounge at Skyreach International looked different. The once bare walls were now lined with framed portraits of aviation pioneers, men and women of all races, ages, and backgrounds. Above the main seating area, a new display cycled through photos of NorthJet Airways' youth mentorship program, highlighting smiling students on tours, in simulators, and even seated beside real pilots in cockpits. At the center of one photo stood a familiar face, Malik Henderson wearing a crisp white shirt and his future aviator's badge, this time with the lanyard proudly intact. He was no longer just a name on a list of selected applicants. He had become a symbol. That day in the lounge, the humiliation, the accusations, the fear had left a mark on him, but it hadn't broken him. If anything, it had sharpened his sense of purpose. Today, Malik stood in front of a group of students from a nearby high school, all of them wide-eyed and eager, gathered as part of NorthJet's New Horizons Outreach Day. Being a pilot isn't just about flying planes, Malik said, his voice steady and confident. It's about communication, responsibility, knowing how every system works, and how to keep people safe in the sky. The students listened closely. Some were taking notes. Others simply stared, inspired by someone who looked like them and had come from a place they recognized. Last month, Malik continued, I almost gave up on this dream. I was sitting in this exact lounge, just like you are now, and someone decided I didn't belong, not because I did anything wrong, but because of how I looked. A quiet hush fell over the group. But here's the thing, he said. Dreams don't die that easily, not when you've worked for them. Not when your community stands behind you, and definitely not when your mom owns the airline. He smiled, a mix of honesty and humor. The students laughed lightly, tension broken. Captain Dana Lewis stood nearby, arms folded, watching proudly. After the incident, she had personally requested to lead the youth mentorship division. She saw herself in Malik and in these students, and she wanted to make sure their paths forward weren't blocked by closed minds or locked doors. She stepped forward now, her captain's stripes gleaming. There's room for all of you in this industry, she said, her voice calm but commanding. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise, and if they do, you send them my way. The group chuckled again, but they believed her, because she had earned every inch of those stripes, and she wore them not just for herself, but for every young person who thought the sky was out of reach. After the session, as the students explored the simulator bay, Malik lingered in the lounge. His mom joined him, carrying 2 hot chocolates. You handled that well, Ava said, handing him a cup. Better than most adults would have. Malik shrugged. Still feels weird sometimes. Like, if you weren't the CEO, would anyone have believed me? Ava didn't answer right away. She looked out the window at a NorthJet aircraft taxiing toward the runway, its lights blinking like a heartbeat. That's why we changed the program, she said finally. Not just for you, Malik, but for every kid who doesn't have a mom in the boardroom. He nodded slowly. We put new protocols in place, bias training, HR escalation guidelines, and the mentorship program, it's tripled in size. You started something important. Malik sipped his drink and smiled. Guess that lounge wasn't just a waiting room, huh? No, Ava said. It was the beginning. Later that day, Malik walked back into the cockpit of a Boeing 787, this time invited by Captain Lewis for another training run. As he settled into the co-pilot seat surrounded by instruments and screens he could already name by heart, he didn't feel like a guest anymore. He felt like he belonged. Because now he knew the sky wasn't just for some. It was for everyone bold enough to reach it. The sun dipped low over Skyreach International, casting golden rays across the glass panels of the terminal. In Ava Henderson's office, a sleek, high-floor space overlooking the runways, the hum of the city faded beneath the soft rhythm of takeoffs and landings. Malik sat across from his mother, both cradling mugs of tea, watching a Northjet 787 glide smoothly into the sky. He never got tired of that view. "How did it go today?" Ava asked, though she already knew. The reports had come in hours ago. Glowing feedback, enthusiastic students, another successful mentorship session. Malik hesitated before answering. It was good. They asked a lot of questions. Some were tough. Tough how? He looked out the window again. One girl asked me what I would have done if you weren't the CEO, if no one had shown up for me that day. Ava's gaze softened. What did you say? I told her the truth, Malik said, that I don't know, that I was scared, that for a few minutes I thought maybe I didn't belong here, that maybe Captain Strauss was right. Ava leaned forward, placing her hand over his. And now? She asked gently. Now? Malik smiled faintly. Now I know she was wrong, and I know that being scared doesn't mean you're not brave. I showed up anyway, and that means something. Ava gave his hand a reassuring squeeze. It means everything. A pause settled between them, not awkward, but full of understanding, full of everything they'd both been through since that day in the lounge. Then Malik spoke again. But I also told her this. Not everyone has a parent who can walk into a room and make the world stop, so we have to build a system where they don't need to. Ava's eyes glistened with pride. That's why you started the program, Malik continued. Not to protect just me, but to make sure no kid ever feels like that again, not in our airline. Behind them, a large poster hung proudly on the wall. It showed Captain Dana Lewis standing in full uniform beside a diverse group of young future aviators. Smiling, confident, unafraid. Across the bottom, in bold, silver letters, were the words Malik had helped write. Fear should never be the price of following your dreams. In the months since the incident, those words had taken on a life of their own. They had become NorthJet's new company-wide initiative, a call for culture shift, not just policy change. Bias training had been expanded, reporting procedures improved, and the mentorship program had grown from a small HR project into a full-fledged division with Malik as one of its youth ambassadors. He had spoken at schools, community centers, and even on national TV. Not as a victim, but as a voice. A voice for inclusion, for hope, for the dreamers still waiting in the wings. That evening, as the airport lit up against the fading sky, Malik stood once more inside the terminal, now beneath a large digital display that read, New Horizons, Building the Future of Flight. Beneath it scrolled real-time stats, 4,800 youth applications this month, 120 new mentors enrolled, 3 international aviation scholarships awarded. A group of new students arrived, looking around in awe. One of them, a shy boy with glasses and a backpack too big for his frame, approached Malik slowly. Are you the guy from the video? He asked. Malik smiled. I guess I am. Is it true what you said, that the sky belongs to all of us? Malik bent down slightly so they were eye level. It absolutely is, he said. You just have to believe it, and never let anyone tell you otherwise. The boy nodded, eyes wide with possibility. As Malik walked them toward the flight simulator bay, a sense of peace settled over him. Not everything had changed, but something had. And sometimes, that's all it takes to start a movement. The day he had once thought would ruin his dreams had in the end redefined them, because he now understood the sky isn't just for those with privilege. It's for the bold, the curious, the determined. It's for those who rise, even after being told to sit down. And Malik Henderson? He was just getting started.